Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining. But we hope this is going to be a really insightful session for you. If you don't know of Aviyel is a place where we are helping projects build sustainable communities. And we've always talked about what it feels like or what the journey of contributors is like and what happens when you're trying to join the community and things like that. But this one specifically is talking about the other side of it, wherein we want to help these maintainers, these early stage maintainers, or the ones that have made it big. We want to make sure that they're able to scale their communities or build their projects with a lot of these best practices that uh, will be talked by Abdul Rahman here. Just to give a little bit of introduction about him, he happens to be an independent software developer from Mauritius who is the maintainer of one of the projects that we have on board, which is called PyHoneyBot. He also maintains a lot of other projects, which I'm sure he'll be mentioning about. He's also someone who likes to help people solve their challenges using software and an organizing member of Python user group of Mauritius. Hey Abdul, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hey,
I can
thank you
hear
so
you.
much for joining us. Over to you.
Okay, so thank you everybody for coming today. So we'll be going over, I'll be putting this whole session into a blog post so that at the end of the session, we'll be having a blog post so that you can have a concrete checklist to go through. So for any open source project, so one of the insights that I have had over the years is that if an open source project is well groomed, so the project is going to attract contributors. That's one thing. And the second thing is that the project is going to be used by people. And there are different aspects concerning grooming your open source project. And what the first thing is to know about is that there are some common practices that that are applicable to all open source projects. And there is a second part which is applicable depending on the tech stack that you use. For example, if you are using Python, there are a series of steps that you can take to improve your project. If you are using, for example, Node, there are different other steps that you can take to level up your project. Well, the first thing, as I guess you all know, it is the README, which I guess by now you've heard of different ways of improving the README. So we won't be going in depth over it, but the general advice that I have is that READMEs should be very clear. README should be. It depends. For example, you have PySimple GUI. So I was saying that we have a blog post which will just after this session, I'll just publish it. But I was saying that concerning READMEs, you have different. The READMEs should serve its purpose. For example, this is a project, PySimple GUI, which has a non-conventional README, I should say, which, for example, it has quite a long README, and earlier it was even longer. Why? Because it included the whole documentation on this README. So the README should serve its purpose. There is no definite guide as to what should mandatorily be on your README. You decide, but the fact is that the README should be clear, should serve its purpose, and the README should ideally guide people as to what they want. For example, people want first thing what the project is about, like PySimple GUI, but what it is about. So they included a tagline explaining what it is about and a bit why they started the project, some users, because when someone is going to use a project, for example, in production, they'd be interested to know of the stability and adoption of the project. So that's why some projects include metrics to enable people to decide. And this is concerning the activity. This is concerning maintenance. Is it being used? And what is the reactivity of maintainers? So that's why you have GitHub statistics also. And also, well, this previously PySimple GUI also included the whole documentation on the README so that people have a single point of entry to the project where they can get whatever whatever they want. So this is concerning where a README has is very neat, clear, and accomplishes its purpose, and it's non-conventional in the sense that it is not what you'd expect most READMEs to be. And the buy copy is recommended if you are serious about the project. If you are thinking that you will spend time over the upcoming month on your project, so it makes sense to include a sponsor link so that people know that you are serious about your project. So this is the first thing is having a nice README, and the purpose of the README is to accomplish its purpose. So the second thing which I'd like to show is concerning contributions. When someone like they have your project and they want to use your project, so they'll want to contribute. So it is very important that you include a thorough guide as to how to contribute and how to set up the project. This is an example of a project which includes a nice contributing guide. And this project, for example, it takes the user from configuring configuring Git, cloning, etc., installing, initializing, installing like pre-commit, which is pre-commit. Normally, when you include it in your project, we'll come to it later. But just saying that all step or every step that the contributor will need to take, it is covered by the contribution documentation. Even setting up the project using an optimal setup, like you can set up the project only for editing or something like that, but a complete setup is appreciated so that any pull request is covered. So like it is fairly complete. And this project I used to onboard Ramon from codec.io. It was to test the onboarding experience of the project. The project is on codec.io, and he said that it was one of the best project that he was onboarded onto. So here you can see the testimonial. But I mean that having a thorough contributing guide, like how you would like people to contribute, is something very nice to have. So this is the second thing. The second thing, one is README. The second is the contributing guidelines. Okay, so and the third thing is using something like pre-commit. It is because normally, for example, let's say for Python, you would like every contribution or every contribution that you make or let us start at the higher level. You would like the project to always maintain a consistent state in terms of code quality. Code quality can mean like style, a nice style, or security, or even like removing unnecessary code, or even refactoring the code. So whatever you want, however you want the project to be, so you'd want like the code base to always remain in that state, in a very clean state. So if, for example, someone has a pull request, so they did a pull request, but let's say they have a commit which says that they upgraded the style of the project. At the end of the day, you would see they did this feature and then another commit. It was a style change. Then you have another meaningful commit, then another non-meaningful commit concerning style. It clutters the commit history. That's why pre-commit is really extraordinary in the sense that it allows you whatever you want to, however you want the code to be or whatever, pre-commit, when you add some files to Git, pre-commit allows you to apply, for example, styles or sorting your imports or even deleting unnecessary lines to the files that has been changed by this particular commit, so that the commit history remains clean and your code also remains always in a very nice state. So adding pre-commit to your project is certainly one of the ways that you can ensure that your code base remains in a very consistent state, in a very like you have some very high standards for your project. And for example, if you see a pre-commit file, you will see, for example, that we've included black, we've included well, here we are reordering the Python imports, but you can also use isort, and we're also having various fixes so that we know that we are committing some very code of a very high standard to the code base. So the third thing is certainly adding pre-commit to your code. In whatever language, pre-commit is available for whatever language you want. Here we saw that it was an example of it being added to a Python project. So, and something that is before we come to security, I'd like to point out that GitHub normally has normally if you include, for example, your pull request template here, or you have pull requests, you can also have issue templates, but whatever you this particular file, GitHub recognizes it. And then what GitHub does is that on each new pull request, it will ask you for the title. It will just it will just fill your pull request text area with a markdown, with this markdown, so that you can just fill in, and the person like doing the pull request, so that a maintainer can know what is happening. Like, did the person, is it a bug fix, for example, or have they gone through the pull request checklist? If the person didn't check the pull request template before, so it is some sort of it is a way to make sure that the person adheres to best practices concerning this project. So there is also issue template, pull request template. So concerning templates, for example, pull request template. issue, etc. And concerning security, normally GitHub has some nice integration for security. What it does, if you go, for example, to the security tab, here we have set up like normally code scanning. Okay, yes, it's good. Normally, if we go to in this project, we haven't set up code scanning, but it's extra. It's really important because you can also do this in your workflow. For example, if you in your workflow, if you are testing, you can also include, for example, for Python, it's Bandit for security audits, but GitHub also provide like code scanning alerts, which is running security audits using CodeQL. For example, for this project, let's set up the code scanning file. So you just say configure CodeQL alert, and then it will ask you for the language. So for this project, it's JavaScript and Python. So you have also all these languages. When you first set up the file, GitHub will automatically detect your language for you. So here it detected that the project is using JavaScript and Python. So you can just add it as is. Okay, and you will see that it is being added. And then you can also have a badge on your README that says that we won't have it here. We won't have it here, but we'll have it, I think, here. Let's see. Okay, so if ever your commit passes CodeQL, so you will have it here. You can show that the latest commits have been passing GitHub security audit. But something interesting also is that under security, if you go to code scanning, here it hasn't yet been enabled. But if you go, for example, for a project where CodeQL has already been enabled, so for example, you see 17, there are 17 alerts that needs to be solved. So it is something very, very interesting to have, and of course to solve. So it is concerning audits and CodeQL. This is something very crucial to have. Why? Well, we'll come to that later. And also, for example, concerning tests, it is also very important that projects have automated checks for tests. It is a bit messy because you are using talks, etc. But it is very we can understand what's going on. It's just using talks to run whatever tests that we have in different environments. Like we install those environments, and then talks will detect the environments or will run the tests in environments that we specify. But just saying that on new pull request, having automated tests does help. So automated tests. And then concerning there are many different things to set up for a project. You can go into the community tab in your inside, and not community standards more. Okay, so it is very good to complete this checklist: description, README, code of conduct, contributing, license, issue template, pull request template, and all these. So concerning the community standards for projects, so GitHub has a nice checklist to enable you to just guide you into making your project really nice. But this checklist is not like a very thorough checklist. It is good on some aspect, but on some aspects it lacks a better. So the GitHub community standard. That's why you have the OpenSSF metric. So for example, here, OpenSSF has a scoreboard. So what does it mean? The OpenSSF is concerned about the security of projects. It is kind of language agnostic. So an OpenSSF scoreboard has this JSON file. For example, if you just you can beautify it. For example, here it will tell you of your different aspects, but it will also it will also tell you in what aspect your project is lacking. For example, does your project has branch protection? Like, can anybody push to the main branch or something like that? Concerning CI tests, so has, for example, pull request that has been merged, did they pass the CI test? So the CII best practices. This is a metric that is very hard to get. We'll come to it later, but this is also a metric that needs to be checked by your project. For example, does your project has code review? Like, do you have proper code reviewing process in place? And the latest mergers, have they been reviewed by someone? So that's and concerning contributors, like the best factor is often quoted for open source projects. It means that if your project, if someone dies, if a maintainer dies, so will the project continue? So for example, if there is only one person responsible for the project, and if the person dies, the project will stop. We call that, we can say that the project has a best factor of 1. So it checks whether you have different organizations contributing to the project. If, for example, you have a project which has contributors from mainly one organization, it is not very nice, because if the organization in itself lacks the motivation to continue contributing to the project, so the project will die. Or if, for example, different, like someone was asking for co-workers to contribute, and the person leave, and the co-workers might lose interest. But when you're having many people, and also important from different organizations, so it ensures that the best factor will be less, concerning whether or not you have documentation, etc., license. So you can also see a whole list of issues of checkpoints that the OpenSSF scoreboard looks for. So it is also important to have the OpenSSF scoreboard checked. And the OpenSSF scoreboard talks about the CII best practices. The CII best practices, it is for projects. For example, let's take Node.js, for example. So you have different levels. You have best practices. The best practices, you have the parsing level, you have the silver or the gold level. So depending on your the scoreboard also takes into consideration the best practices that you have here. So for example, for Node.js, so for all project, you will have the same questions, and it is free to log in. And you can see that Node.js, they have 100% completion for the parsing level. I don't know if they have, okay, so they are at the parsing level. So apparently even Node.js has only the parsing level because they, uh, I think maybe they have the, okay, they have also the silver. Okay, they haven't completed the silver level. So I'm not saying that Node.js lacks some standard, but it's very painful and hard to get these open SSF best practices right. So it is worth it if ever you want your project to be at the highest level possible. The the CII best practices from Open SSF is it. And normally, as you add all these things, your project becomes somewhat more complicated to contribute to. But this can be solved using a stepwise contributing guideline. So this is one thing which is very important, that as you increase the checklist for people to contribute, so you will have normally less people who are willing to contribute unless everything is set up very nicely and smoothly. And my my advice is that uh, you should have everything you need, but make it as easy as possible for contributors to well contribute. For example, this project of mine, um, well, now we talk a bit about the people aspect of it. Like when you have like you are building a project, you are dealing with people, but how to make sure that people, they have a nice environment to evolve. So the first thing is, for example, have something like Discord. So this is something. And for example, Aviyel has the reward program. Let's see if you can have Aviyel has the rewards program. For example, okay, so it is find something to reward contributors. For example, this is the reward program. So have something that contributors like they will like to something that they can share, something that they feel they really like besides contributing. For example, we each contributor could add their flag. Like this was one side reward, you can say, but Aviyel has a proper like scheme in place. So one is the chat, the second is some side reward, something like that. And also like make it very easy to contribute to. For example, this on this project, to for example create a plugin for this IOC bot. This is all what you need. So I also think that if your project has a somewhat neat API, many people will be interested to contribute to. And also every issue, like to have the first timers label. I don't know if we have one here. Okay, for example, first timers only label. But for example, this project does not yet have a pre-commit. So what happens is that this person is working on it. So like sometimes, even if you can solve an issue, So wait for someone else to do it. Like give people the chance to contribute to the project. And you can see that by giving people the chance to contribute. So we have people who have contributed, and many of them are long-time contributors, and we've had a quite some quite awesome contributions. And you can also see like the testimonials of people who have contributed to the project and they really like it, etc. So just saying that the social aspect of a project is also important to help as many people to contribute as possible. And I can only say that if your project is useful and has completes all the checklists, so you will see that the downloads really start to come. For example, I have this project of mine, which I haven't yet. For example, this project apparently has 38,000 downloads on PyPy, but I haven't had even one people telling me that they are using the project. So, which is very weird. Like the people don't say that, oh, you did something nice or something like that. I think because the documentation is here. It is well documented, and we also have like many demos around, and it also has some very like nice features. And well, the README was a bit longer before, but just saying that if your project is somewhat nice, then the metrics automatically goes up. And this project doesn't have like all the checklists here, but it does have like good documentation and good demos, and it has also very nice features. So this is a bit about how to level up your open source project. So if maybe you have any questions, so you can ask me.
Hey, thank you so much for that. We have some questions here on the Q&A. Let me just help you read that. So the first question here is about, could you tell us something about the code owner's file on GitHub?
The what? I think I can see. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, if you go to the question answer, scroll up, you will see that there. Yeah.
No, this is something new to me, the code owner's file. I haven't used it, or I don't know.
Okay,
So,
no problem. Maybe we can skip to the next question.
Okay, and okay, what range of OpenSF score is considered to be safe? So I'd say like the automated tests. Like if you don't have the automated, for example, automated tests and pre-commit, so because OpenSSF it's really hard to get right, and I think that automated tests and automated code audits, those are two things that really matters. Like you, I think security has a very nice place and should be given prime importance, because when you have a project, you tend to be very lax about this. But I'd say it depends on the level of maturity of the developer concerning how they see that these practices help their project. Like, for example, if it's a utility, a simple utility, so I don't think like taking the trouble for all these things. So like if something for fun, for example, but as soon as it's being used in production, so it's always better to be on the safe side. So I do think that, for example, to have a good culture, like the person, the coder must have a good engineering culture. So like, for example, mandatory reviews, it all depends whether the person views these standards as being boring or not. if these are not boring, it all depends on the understanding of the person and whether or not these standards are a hassle. So, for example, code reviews, automated tests, and things like that. So, I consider these to be really important, and I think that personally, every project first identify whether the project is critical or not. If the project is critical, then feeling like login and creating a new entry for this project and filling the open SSF like best practices is a nice is a nice exercise in itself, at least to feel that one. And like for example, for PyHoney, but we haven't like gone to the roof. Or I don't have a nice answer, but I tell that having automated code scanning for security vulnerabilities and having automated tests are, at the end of the day, the two things that matter. And why I have chosen like Python, it is because, well, I started with C++, Java, but actually picked up Python using this project. This was like the project that I picked up Python from. I coded in JavaScript before, but I'd say that Python is straightforward. That's one thing. If you want to do something like, for example, for this bot, I started it in Java, but I switched because I felt that I couldn't code from scratch just by reading the documentation. But with Python, when you go to the sockets documentation, you have an idea of what's going on, and just by reading the documentation, you can implement what you want. It's just some lines of code, which for me was very nice. And also about I'm interested into language compiler theory, language theories, if you like. So I see Python as a next level like language because you don't absolutely need braces. It's neater. One of the reasons why people prefer YAML, it's because it's neat, and Python is neat. And using, for example, the format of Python doesn't exclude that you cannot have like typing. Python doesn't support typing, not type hinting, but typing as such, because the backend, like CPython, doesn't allows it. But I mean, syntax-wise, a language can have like typing and not have braces. Like it's up to the syntax. I see Python as syntactically very beautiful. That's why I chose Python. And because most of the time, be it a web app or whatever, so you get to implement like what the usual plus of Python that you get to implement, and then prototype quickly, and then implement in whatever language you like. And also Python projects tend to be really nice in terms of documentation, the language itself, and in terms of community contributions, it is really great. And I don't think there is another language which has these many factors combined. For example, I'll also use Go and JavaScript, for example. It depends on needs, but for hobby projects or whenever I can. So it's definitely Python. And also it's a language which is very in advance concerning features. For example, case not pattern matching pattern matching concerning the switch case and etc. There are many concepts that were introduced in like by Python. Like they have a good eye for language features, and the community, which is at the helm of like Python design, like the core team, they are very bright people, intelligent people who like, I mean, they are very bright people. Like they don't not only know Python, they know other languages, but they are very critical concerning new features that are inserted into the Python language. So I I feel at ease in the Python ecosystem, and also of course the community is over the moon. I don't see a language which has a nice community as Python. I'm saying that both as an attendee at Python events and as an organizer of Python events. So that's a bit from me.
Thank you so much for that. I am also someone who uses Python on a daily basis, and I really feel it's more simplified to use Python, and you don't really have to write a lot of lines of codes to be able to achieve simpler tasks. Thank you so much for your time. I think that's all the questions we have. But before we wrap this up, I was wondering if you would want to share something interesting that you're working on right now.
Okay, so uh, well, I can say that today I've worked at many different like places in many different situations, and if you for example go to my LinkedIn, you will see some very nice reviews from people working at like even big tech companies. But I can say the essence of it all is hobby projects, and currently I'm working on that. It is more of a hobby project which I'm working on, and I don't say that it's very cool or it's very like it's not extraordinary, but for me it's what I'm working on, like repositories under this organization. This is essentially Django written in Flask. So so just like you have Django packages, so you have like shop your apps, and right now I'm working on implementing shop your packages so that you can just pip install. Like currently you have shop your apps, but you cannot like pip install them. So you're just adding the feature to so that you can pip install shop your apps, so that when you're using like Flask and you want to have Django advantages, so you can have. So it's not something very exciting, but it's something that for me is interesting.
Yeah, we are also looking forward to have that on Aviyel. We noticed that you're building this and you're really interested in getting this up. We, I think, also have another question. Would you mind scrolling down the question and answers and taking that as well?
Okay. Well, I haven't used GitLab much. I I don't know. I don't know, but the reason I choose GitHub, it's because it's very community oriented, and this discussion tab is really nice. For example, if you go to the FOSS API project, the tab, you will see like people answering, etc. So I I don't know what GitLab supports. I'm more of a GitHub someone.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for answering all of those questions, and thank you so much for taking out time to come here and discuss all of these things. This is definitely going to help us in a lot of ways, and we are looking forward to you publishing this article as well that you were making note of while you were speaking.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. And my last words will be like contribute to open source, because like right now, I've spoken, for example, at many conferences. Like I've worked with many super interesting companies, like the best, sometimes the best companies in the world, and etc. etc. And I can say that it all boils down to some hobby project that you have on GitHub, and also contributing to other projects. And well, I just say that continue like contributing to open source.
Thank you so much for that. I'm really sure that everybody here enjoyed it and found a lot of value in what you've conveyed today through this session. And we really look forward to hosting you for another session in the near future. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.